In many communities, homeowners associations, HOAs, play a pivotal role in maintaining property values and ensuring that neighborhood standards are upheld. These entities, often composed of residents elected by their peers, establish rules and regulations that govern everything from architectural styles to landscaping choices. While their intentions may revolve around fostering a harmonious living environment, the influence of an HOA can sometimes overreach into personal property rights, creating tension between individual homeowners and the collective expectations of the community. In my neighborhood, the HOA has long been seen as a guardian of aesthetic uniformity, wielding significant power over our daily lives. From color palettes for house exteriors to restrictions on fence heights, their rules are designed to preserve an image of cohesion. However, this control can sometimes feel stifling, especially when it comes to innovations like solar panels. Many residents are eager to adopt renewable energy solutions not only for environmental reasons but also for the potential reduction in utility costs. The conflict began quietly enough. I had installed a $1,000 set of solar panels on my roof, believing I was making a responsible choice for both my family and the planet. Yet, unbeknownst to me at the time, this decision would set off a chain reaction that would expose deeper issues within our HOA's authority. As I celebrated my investment in sustainable energy, I remained blissfully unaware that the HOA was preparing to challenge my choice, an action that would soon spiral into an unexpected confrontation involving trespassing and legal implications. Little did they know that I wasn't just another homeowner but an investigator for a government agency focused on housing regulations. This revelation would ultimately redefine the stakes of our unfolding conflict. Embracing solar energy was not just a financial decision for me, it was a manifestation of my values and a commitment to sustainability. With rising utility costs and increasing concerns about climate change, the motivation to install solar panels on my roof became clearer than ever. I pictured a future where my family could generate clean energy, reduce our carbon footprint, and potentially save money in the long run. The idea of harnessing the sun's power felt empowering, a step toward self-sufficiency that echoed my belief in the importance of protecting our environment for future generations. After researching options and calculating potential savings, I decided to invest in a $1,000 solar panel system. It wasn't just an impulsive choice, I meticulously considered every aspect, from the installation process to possible tax incentives. On the day the panels were installed, I felt a wave of pride wash over me. Looking at the sleek panels gleaming in the sunlight, I imagined how my decision would inspire others in our community to consider similar alternatives, sparking a movement toward renewable energy. However, I was also acutely aware of our neighborhood's HOA regulations, which had often left residents feeling constrained. Still, my commitment to sustainability outweighed any hesitation. I believed that my investment would ultimately contribute positively to our community, aligning with both modern environmental practices and economic benefits. Yet, little did I anticipate that this act of environmental stewardship would soon thrust me into a battle with the HOA, testing not only my resolve but also the very principles I stood for. The enthusiasm that came with installing those solar panels would soon be overshadowed by a looming confrontation, one that entangled me in unexpected complexities involving authority and advocacy. Not long after the solar panels were installed, I received a formal notification from the HOA that left me feeling both unsettled and incredulous. The letter, which arrived in an unassuming envelope, outlined several alleged violations of community guidelines regarding architectural modifications. It specifically cited my solar panel installation as a breach of the HOA's regulations, claiming that it disrupted the aesthetic uniformity that our community supposedly valued. The tone of the letter was authoritative, almost condescending, as if I had committed an unforgivable offense rather than making a choice aimed at environmental stewardship. My initial reaction was disbelief. How could my effort to embrace renewable energy be construed as a violation? I meticulously reviewed the community guidelines, searching for any mention of solar panels. To my surprise, the regulations were vaguely written. They provided little clarity on how innovations like solar energy systems fit into their rigid framework. As frustration mounted, I prepared a response that encapsulated not only my rights as a homeowner but also my commitment to sustainability. When I submitted my rebuttal, I was hopeful for an open dialogue but instead found myself in a heated exchange with HOA representatives during a scheduled meeting. In that room filled with concerned neighbors and board members, tempers flared as I argued passionately for my right to the improvements I had made. They remained steadfast in their position, citing vague claims about neighborhood aesthetics and property values. It was disheartening to see how quickly rational discourse devolved into accusations and defensiveness. Each side had become entrenched in their beliefs, me advocating for modern solutions and energy independence while they clung to outdated regulations that threatened to stifle progress. This clash would only serve to escalate tensions between us in the days and weeks to come. Little did they know that underestimating me would be their greatest miscalculation yet. One fateful morning, while sipping my coffee and basking in the early sunlight streaming through the window, I noticed a commotion outside. Glancing out, I was shocked to see several individuals from the HOA gathered near my house, their expressions a blend of determination and arrogance. My heart raced as reality sank in. They were preparing to remove my solar panels without permission. Shouting a warning to my family, I rushed outside, still clad in my pajamas. "What do you think you're doing?" I demanded, my voice shaky but defiant. The HOA representatives turned toward me, seemingly unfazed by my presence. Their leader, a sturdy man with a clipboard, explained that they had decided the panels were unlawful and had come to rectify the situation immediately. "It's for the good of the neighborhood," he insisted dismissively. I felt a wave of anger and disbelief wash over me. How could they deem my eco-friendly investment a violation? It was as if everything I had stood for, my ideals of sustainability and responsibility, was being trampled underfoot in their quest for conformity. As they began dismantling the panels with tools clanging against my roof, my emotions surged from frustration to helplessness. Feeling violated and furious, I recorded the incident on my phone while attempting to reason with them. Alas, they were resolute, thumbing through their community guidelines with an air of superiority that rendered any discussion futile. My efforts to protest were drowned out by the sound of drills and machinery echoing off the walls of our peaceful neighborhood. In that moment, it became painfully clear, this was more than just about solar panels. It was about power dynamics and individual rights being crushed by a regulatory body that overstepped its authority. Little did they know that this invasive action would ignite a fire within me, a fire fueled by indignation and justice that would not be easily extinguished. As the dust settled from the chaotic scene of the panel removal, a fire ignited within me, not just from indignation, but also from a deep sense of purpose. The HOA's blatant disregard for my rights and their overreach into my personal choices had crossed a line. Little did they know, this confrontation was more than just a homeowner defending their property, it was about to escalate in ways they could never have anticipated. In the days that followed, I began to gather evidence of the HOA's violations, not just against me, but against the principles of freedom and fairness that should govern our community. My role as an investigator for a government agency specializing in housing regulations was not something I often discussed with neighbors. It felt like a secret identity, one that I had kept private to maintain trust and rapport in my community. Equipped with the knowledge of housing laws and community rights, I meticulously documented every interaction with the HOA. I compiled records of their trespass, audio recordings from our meetings, and even researched case law that supported my position. With each piece of evidence, my resolve strengthened. I wasn't just an aggrieved homeowner, I was someone who understood the legal framework meant to protect individuals from overreaching authority. When I finally decided to confront them again, this time armed not only with my passion but with knowledge, I felt a surge of empowerment. Arranging a formal meeting with the HOA board, I prepared to reveal not only my findings regarding their missteps but to disclose my true identity as an investigator tasked with upholding housing rights. The moment I laid out my credentials, I could see their confidence waver. They were no longer dealing with just another homeowner but someone who could challenge their authority through legal means. The tides were turning, and as I stood before them ready to assert both my rights and those of others in our community, I realized this struggle was no longer mine alone. It was about ensuring fairness for everyone against an oppressive system. As I delved deeper into my investigation, it became increasingly clear that the HOA's actions had significant legal ramifications. The unauthorized removal of my solar panels was not merely a violation of community guidelines, it constituted trespassing and could potentially expose the HOA to legal liability. Under property law, homeowners have the right to make alterations to their property, including the installation of solar panels, as these modifications are often protected under laws promoting renewable energy. I consulted various resources, including state statutes and local ordinances governing homeowners' rights. To my dismay, I discovered that many communities were beginning to recognize the importance of solar energy in combating climate change, leading to legislation that protects homeowners who wish to install such systems. The very principles that guided my decision to embrace solar energy were now fortifying my case against the HOA. Armed with this knowledge, I outlined potential claims for trespass. The HOA had entered my property without consent and interfered with my right to modify it as I saw fit. Furthermore, I researched precedents where homeowners successfully challenged HOAs over similar issues, drawing on cases where courts ruled in favor of residents seeking to use their properties for sustainable practices. Beyond trespassing, I also considered the broader implications of homeowner rights in regard to aesthetic regulations. While HOAs often claim authority over community aesthetics, regulations must balance those interests against individual freedoms. As I prepared my evidence for an upcoming meeting with the board, I felt a wave of confidence wash over me. I was no longer just an aggrieved homeowner but a well-informed advocate poised to defend both my rights and the rights of others in our community. This battle was about more than just my solar panels. It was a pivotal moment that could reshape how our community viewed individual rights against institutional power. With each piece of evidence collected and every legal precedent reviewed, I felt more empowered to challenge the status quo and demand accountability from those who sought to control our choices. Fueled by my determination to challenge the HOA's actions, I embarked on an extensive quest to gather evidence that would support my case. My first step was to meticulously document every interaction I had with the HOA representatives. I began by writing detailed accounts of our meetings, noting not just what was said but also the body language and demeanor of those present. I wanted to capture the essence of their dismissive attitude, which often felt more like intimidation than constructive dialogue. Next, I turned my attention to the community guidelines that the HOA had cited in their notifications. As I pored over the documents, I scrutinized every line for inconsistencies and vague language that could be leveraged in my favor. To my relief, I found several clauses that seemed to contradict their claims about aesthetic uniformity, especially when it came to innovative modifications like solar panels. It became clear that they had selectively interpreted the guidelines to suit their agenda. Realizing the importance of legal expertise, I reached out to local housing rights organizations and legal experts who specialized in property law. These consultations proved invaluable. They provided me with insights into similar cases and the legal protections afforded to homeowners. Each conversation armed me with knowledge about my rights and options, bolstering my confidence as I prepared for my confrontation with the HOA. Additionally, I started compiling a visual record of my solar panels, photos showing their impact on the property and how they harmonized with the home's aesthetic. I even gathered testimonials from neighbors who supported my decision and understood the importance of renewable energy. This evidence would not only illustrate my commitment to sustainability but also highlight community backing against the HOA's overreach. With each piece of evidence collected, a sense of empowerment surged within me. No longer was I just a solitary homeowner facing off against an organization. I was becoming a voice for change, ready to advocate for both myself and others in our community. The upcoming meeting with the HOA promised to be a turning point, and I was determined to ensure that my rights, and those of other homeowners, would be respected. As news of the HOA's actions spread throughout the neighborhood, the community's response was a mix of concern and curiosity. Many neighbors were shocked to learn that the HOA had trespassed on my property to remove the solar panels, viewing it as an overreach that threatened not only my rights but also their own. Conversations erupted in backyards and at community gatherings, with residents expressing disbelief that an organization designed to maintain harmony could resort to such aggressive tactics. Support began to grow for my cause as more people realized the potential implications for their own property rights. Neighbors who had previously been indifferent or even supportive of the HOA began to question its authority. Some homeowners came forward, sharing their own stories of frustrations with the HOA's strict regulations. They described instances where they felt constrained by the rules, whether it was about fence heights or landscaping choices. The ripple effect was palpable. People started discussing how a collective stand against the HOA could foster a more balanced approach to community standards. In this newfound atmosphere of solidarity, several residents approached me to express their support. They offered to provide testimonials regarding my solar panel installation and even planned to attend the upcoming meeting with the HOA. This surge of community backing felt exhilarating and was a reminder that I wasn't alone in this fight. We were standing together against a common challenge, asserting our rights as homeowners while advocating for sustainable practices. However, not everyone was in favor of my actions. Some long-standing HOA supporters voiced concerns about maintaining property values and aesthetic consistency, fearing that my fight could lead to chaos in community governance. Yet, I remained undeterred, believing that open dialogue and collective advocacy could lead us toward a more equitable resolution. As I prepared for the meeting, I felt a profound sense of purpose, not just for myself but for a community ready to reclaim their voice and ensure we could all make choices that aligned with our values without fear of unjust repercussions. With the momentum of community support behind me, I knew it was crucial to prepare for a formal confrontation with the HOA. My approach needed to be methodical and strategic, as I aimed not only to assert my rights but also to set a precedent for homeowners facing similar challenges. First, I organized all my collected evidence into a comprehensive presentation. This included documentation of interactions with the HOA, photographs of the solar panels, and testimonials from neighbors who supported my position. I wanted to ensure that I had concrete examples illustrating how the HOA's actions had violated not just my rights, but also the principles of fairness and community welfare. Next, I drafted a formal letter outlining my grievances. In this letter, I articulated the unauthorized removal of my solar panels as an act of trespassing and detailed how it contradicted both community guidelines and state laws promoting renewable energy. It was essential to convey that this issue was not merely personal, it affected all homeowners' rights within our community. I also began researching mediation processes, recognizing that resolving this conflict outside of court could be beneficial for all parties involved. Engaging in mediation could foster a more constructive dialogue and allow us to reach an agreement that upheld community values while respecting individual rights. To bolster my case further, I scheduled meetings with legal experts specializing in housing law who could provide insight into potential outcomes and strategies. Their guidance helped me anticipate the HOA's arguments and prepare counterpoints that emphasized both legal precedents and ethical considerations regarding property rights. Finally, as the date for the meeting approached, I practiced my presentation multiple times. It was important for me to convey confidence and clarity when addressing the board. With every passing day, I felt more empowered, not just as a homeowner standing up for myself but as an advocate for fairness in our entire community. This confrontation would be pivotal. It represented a fight against authoritative overreach and an affirmation of our collective right to make choices about our own homes. The day of the hearing arrived, and the atmosphere in the meeting room was charged with anticipation. I sat at a table facing the HOA board, flanked by neighbors who had offered their support. As I glanced at the panel of representatives, I could sense their confidence wavering. They were no longer just dealing with a frustrated homeowner but someone armed with evidence and community backing. The session began with an introductory statement from the HOA president, who reiterated their concerns about my solar panels disrupting the neighborhood's aesthetic. In response, I laid out my case methodically, highlighting the unauthorized removal as trespassing and emphasizing how it not only violated my rights but potentially those of other homeowners in the community. I presented photographs of my installation, showing how it blended seamlessly with my home while providing renewable energy benefits. A pivotal moment came when I brought forth testimonials from several neighbors who voiced their support for sustainable energy practices. Their collective plea shifted the narrative slightly. Suddenly, I wasn't simply arguing for my own rights but speaking on behalf of a growing movement within our neighborhood. This garnered reactions from both the board and those in attendance, leading to murmurs of agreement among residents. The HOA representatives countered with claims about maintaining property values and aesthetic uniformity. However, I had anticipated this line of argument. Armed with research on local laws supporting renewable energy initiatives, I presented data showing how communities that embraced sustainability tended to thrive economically in the long run. As arguments ensued back and forth, one board member appeared less certain than before, challenging his colleague's stance on rigid enforcement of aesthetic guidelines over homeowner rights. This moment of doubt among them felt pivotal. It was clear they were beginning to recognize that perhaps a re-evaluation of their approach was necessary. By the time the session concluded, there was a palpable shift in the room. The seeds of change had been planted, not just for me, but for other residents who shared similar aspirations. While the outcome remained uncertain, I left that day feeling invigorated by our collective effort. We had moved beyond mere confrontation. We had ignited a dialogue that could reshape our community's future. As the hearing concluded, discussions about potential resolutions began to take shape. The HOA board members, clearly shaken by the weight of the evidence presented, found themselves at a crossroads. They had to decide how to address the fallout from the incident. Their credibility was at stake, and they understood that the community's trust was waning. One possible outcome discussed was the reinstatement of my solar panels. This option would not only remedy the immediate situation but could also serve as a gesture of goodwill, signaling to residents that the HOA was willing to adapt and embrace sustainable practices. Such a decision would foster a new understanding of what it meant to be a community, one that prioritized both individual rights and collective well-being. In tandem with this possibility, I proposed a financial compensation for the damages incurred due to the unauthorized removal. After all, the panels represented not only a financial investment but also a commitment to sustainable living that had been unjustly undermined. Compensation would acknowledge the HOA's missteps and set a precedent for accountability moving forward. As deliberations continued, some board members expressed concern about maintaining property values and aesthetic standards. They raised questions about how reinstating my solar panels might influence other homeowners considering similar modifications. However, the tide had shifted. Discussions now included exploring amendments to community guidelines that would establish clearer protocols for renewable energy installations. The idea of mediation emerged as another viable path forward. Engaging in mediation could lead to an amicable resolution that addressed both the HOA's concerns and my rights as a homeowner. This collaborative approach could prevent future conflicts and foster open dialogue on sustainability initiatives. By the end of the meeting, it was clear that whatever resolution emerged would have lasting implications, not just for me but for our entire community. The stakes were high, and the conversation had begun to shift towards a more inclusive vision of what our neighborhood could become, one where individual rights and community standards could coexist harmoniously. This newfound focus on collaboration and dialogue felt like a significant victory in itself, laying the groundwork for ongoing transformation in our collective approach to homeownership and sustainability. Reflecting on the tumultuous journey I experienced with the HOA, I realize how profoundly it shifted my perspective on community governance and the delicate balance between individual rights and collective regulations. Initially, I viewed the HOA as a necessary entity aimed at protecting property values and ensuring a unified aesthetic in our neighborhood. However, my confrontation with them over the solar panels unveiled a different reality, a system that could wield its power to stifle innovation and infringe upon personal freedoms. This conflict forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about authority and accountability. I learned that while guidelines are essential for maintaining order, they should not be so rigid as to inhibit personal expression or sustainable practices. The HOA's actions, rooted in tradition and conformity, overlooked the evolving needs of a community eager to embrace new technologies for the greater good. In engaging my neighbors and advocating for my rights, I became acutely aware of the importance of open dialogue within community governance. It wasn't just about defending my own investment, it was about standing up for shared values that reflected our commitment to environmental sustainability and individual choice. My experience ignited a passion not only for my own rights but also for the rights of others who might feel voiceless against bureaucratic overreach. Moreover, witnessing the shift in attitudes among my neighbors highlighted a crucial lesson: collective action can lead to meaningful change. The support I received during this ordeal showed me that communities thrive when residents unite around common goals, a sentiment that reinforces the idea that individual rights can exist harmoniously alongside communal responsibilities. As I look ahead, I'm inspired to continue fostering this collaborative spirit in our neighborhood. The journey has shaped me into an advocate not just for myself but for all homeowners seeking fairness within their communities. Ultimately, this experience taught me that effective governance should empower residents rather than constrain them, an insight that will guide my future interactions with both neighbors and governing bodies alike. As I reflect on this entire ordeal with the HOA and the efforts to reclaim my solar panels, several key takeaways emerge that resonate deeply within me. First and foremost, I have learned the immense power of advocacy, not just for oneself, but for the broader community as well. My initial battle was motivated by a personal investment in sustainability, yet it quickly transformed into a fight for the rights of all homeowners who might feel marginalized or constrained by bureaucratic regulations. This experience has shown me that standing up for individual rights can spark collective action, leading to meaningful change. Understanding local laws was another critical lesson gleaned from this journey. Armed with knowledge about property rights and renewable energy legislation, I was able to challenge the HOA effectively. This underscored the importance of being informed. Knowing your rights gives you a formidable tool in navigating conflicts with governing bodies. I now recognize that education and awareness about local regulations can empower homeowners to advocate for their interests confidently. Furthermore, this experience has highlighted the significance of open communication within community governance. Engaging in dialogues with neighbors led to solidarity and support, showing that when residents unite around common values, like sustainability and fairness, transformative change is possible. I am committed to fostering this spirit of collaboration moving forward. Lastly, I have come to appreciate the delicate balance between individual freedoms and collective responsibilities in community living. While guidelines are necessary for maintaining harmony, they should evolve alongside societal needs and aspirations for innovation. In conclusion, my ordeal has not only shaped my views on community dynamics but has also inspired me to become an advocate for others facing similar challenges. By sharing my story and encouraging open discussions about homeowners' rights, I hope to inspire others to navigate their own journeys with courage and conviction, ensuring that our communities remain vibrant places where individual choices and communal values can coexist harmoniously.